Inside every single modern car engine, there's this unsung hero. It's a system working at incredible speeds with mind-boggling precision, delivering the perfect sip of fuel for every single explosion that pushes your car forward. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this amazing technology and see exactly how it all works.
But first, you got to ask this question. For decades, the carburetor was king. It was in everything. And then, poof, it felt like they just vanished from new cars. Almost overnight. This wasn't just a minor upgrade, it was a total revolution. So what on earth happened?
All right, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with exactly why carburetors became a thing of the past. Then we'll get into the first big fix, manifold injection. From there, we'll see how that evolved into the super powerful tech of direct injection. Check out its two incredibly clever operating modes, and wrap up by seeing how all this precision engineering is getting ready for the fuels of the future.
So let's get right into the why. You see, the big push away from carburetors wasn't really about getting more horsepower, not at first anyway. The real pressure came from a growing demand for cars that were way more economical and, frankly, less polluting, especially as strict emissions laws started rolling out in the 70s and 80s.
The biggest problem with the good old carburetor was its lack of precision. Just think of it like a simple watering can. Sure, it gets water on the plants, but it's kind of sloppy, right? It just couldn't deliver the exact amount of fuel needed for all the different ways you drive. That meant it was wasteful, and there was no way it could meet those tough new emission standards. The answer, of course, was electronic control, and Bosch was right at the forefront of this whole thing. Now, what's really wild about this is just how fast the technology took off. In a little over a decade, we went from the very first electronic systems like D-Jetronic all the way to the incredibly advanced Motronic system, which basically put the fuel, the ignition, and the whole engine management into one single digital brain.
So what was that first major solution that replaced the carburetor? Well, that would be a system called manifold injection. This was really the first time a computer took charge of the fuel delivery process, and it brought a whole new level of precision to the engine.
So, what is it exactly? Well, manifold injection sprays a superfine mist of fuel into the intake manifold. That's the set of tubes that feeds air into the cylinders. And the key thing to remember here is that the fuel and air mix outside the combustion chamber, creating that perfect combustible blend before the intake valve even opens.
Now, to really get why this was such a huge leap, we have to talk about a super important idea, the stoichiometric ratio. It sounds complicated, but it's just the chemically perfect recipe of air and fuel. In a perfect world, every single molecule of fuel would burn completely with every molecule of oxygen, leaving nothing behind. For gasoline, we call this perfect ratio lambda equals 1.
And this number right here just perfectly illustrates the kind of precision we're talking about. To hit that perfect lambda 1 sweet spot, the engine's computer has to mix exactly 14.7 kilograms of air for every single kilogram of fuel. Not 15, not 14.5, it has to be dead on 14.7. That's the magic number that modern engines are always chasing.
And why is that number so critical? Well, here's the kicker. This incredible precision isn't just for saving gas. It's the only way the three-way catalytic converter, the main pollution control device in your car's exhaust, can actually do its job right. To scrub those pollutants effectively, it absolutely needs that exact 14.7-to-1 mixture.
Manifold injection was a fantastic step forward. But, engineers, they always know they can do better. That relentless push for more power and even better efficiency led them to rethink the whole thing, which brought us to the next massive evolution, gasoline direct injection, or GDI.
Okay, this really shows you what a fundamental shift it was. With manifold injection, the injector is outside, in the intake. With GDI, they move the injector right inside the combustion chamber itself. Now, to do that, you need a crazy increase in fuel pressure. We're talking from around 4 bar, which is maybe 60 psi, all the way up to 200 bar. That's almost 3,000 psi. You're trading a simple system for one that unlocks massive gains in efficiency.
And the results? They're seriously impressive. By shooting that fuel directly into the cylinder, GDI can save up to 20% on fuel. Why? Because as the fuel instantly evaporates, it has this cooling effect inside the chamber. That lets engineers use a higher compression ratio, making the engine much more efficient and resistant to engine knock. So how do you get those insane pressures? GDI systems use a really clever two-step process. First, a normal electric pump back in the fuel tank sends gas up to the engine at a pretty low pressure, maybe 3 to 5 bar. Then, a second, high-pressure pump usually driven right off the engine's camshaft, takes that fuel and pressurizes it to the extreme levels needed for direct injection.
But the real genius of GDI isn't just about raw pressure. It's about being smart. A GDI engine can completely change its fuel strategy on the fly, basically giving it two different personalities depending on what you, the driver, are asking it to do.
And these two personalities are called homogeneous mode and stratified charge mode. Really, you can just think of it as power mode for when you need to get going and economy mode for when you're just cruising and sipping fuel. All right, let's talk homogeneous mode. When you put your foot down and ask for power, the system acts a little like the old manifold injection. It sprays the fuel in early as the air is being sucked into the cylinder, which gives it plenty of time to mix perfectly. This creates that ideal stoichiometric mixture everywhere in the cylinder, ready to deliver maximum power. But here is where it gets incredibly clever. In stratified charge mode, which is for gentle, low-speed driving, the whole strategy flips. The fuel gets injected super late as the piston is already coming up to compress the air. This creates a tiny, concentrated, easy-to-ignite cloud of fuel right around the spark plug, while the rest of the cylinder is mostly just air. The overall mixture becomes incredibly lean. We're talking a lambda value as high as 10, and that saves a ton of fuel.
So, it's pretty clear that the precision of direct injection totally changed the game for gasoline engines. But how does this kind of thinking apply to other fuels? Well, let's take a look at something like compressed natural gas, or CNG. You know, natural gas is an amazing fuel for internal combustion engines. It burns really clean and has incredible efficiency potential. The thing is, because it's a gas and not a liquid, it brings a whole new set of engineering puzzles that the fuel injection system has to solve.
And this chart just says it all. Check out one of the biggest advantages of CNG, its resistance to engine knock. That's its octane rating is around 130. That is way, way higher than even premium gasoline. What that means is an engine can run much higher compression or more turbo boost without any fear of knock, which unlocks huge gains in efficiency.
Now, the big takeaway here is how the pressures are completely backward. Natural gas is stored in the tank at a super high pressure, about 200 bar. But before it gets injected, a special regulator has to step that pressure down to about 7 bar. That's the total opposite of a gasoline GDI system, which takes low-pressure fuel and makes it high pressure. This difference means you need completely different hardware to handle it.
So when you look at the whole picture, the story of fuel injection is really a story about the relentless pursuit of precision. It went from being a pretty simple mechanical spray to this incredibly sophisticated, intelligent, data-driven event that's calculated and perfectly executed millions and millions of times over the life of an engine. And that really leaves us with a fascinating question to chew on. As engines keep evolving, whether that means advanced hybrids, new synthetic fuels, or something we haven't even thought of yet, one thing is for sure, the core principle of delivering the exact right amount of energy at the exact right moment will still be at the very heart of whatever moves us forward.